From childhood, Dina Azizova, born into a Muslim family, was raised strictly. The father was the head of the house, and his word was law. And that word was most often forbid. Forbid toys, frolicking, dolls. But dolls were what Dina loved most in the world. She got her first job at the age of 13, working at a textile factory. With her first paycheck, the schoolgirl bought herself a doll. However, she didn't get to play with it for long. After her first failing grade, the doll was thrown into the furnace. And so it was for any misdemeanor. Thus, Dina learned in childhood that the most precious things could be easily taken and destroyed, and only troubles waited outside the home's threshold. At 17, Dina hastily married Daud. Almost immediately after the wedding, the man began to beat the girl, drink, and carouse. Taking her newborn daughter, Dilyara, in her arms, she fled to Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, Dina met tall and handsome Ruslan. He was indifferent to the young woman, but she did everything possible to make him marry her. True, even in marriage, Ruslan was distant, did not feel reciprocal love, and as if allowed himself to be loved. To awaken any feelings in the man, Dina decided to cheat on Ruslan. Here, the technician, Suyun Ramatov, who came to fix the television, came into play. But her husband became even colder towards his wife. Thus, Dina also learned in her youth that men can hurt very deeply. The affair with the TV technician led to pregnancy. Later, to one more and yet another. As a result, from Suyun Ramatov, Dina Azizova gave birth to 3 children: Darina, born 1999, David, born 2004, and Diana, born 2008. Blinded by love, Suyun did not notice the strange behavior of his wife, who now and then beat the daughter from her first marriage. He found out about it much later. When we only got together, she beat the eldest daughter, Dilyara. I don't know why, for minor misdemeanors, Suyun Ramatov recounted. Darina said, as I went to work, she beat, then glossed over everything, pulled down the sleeves so that there were no bruises visible. And when I came, everything was normal. I absolutely did not pay attention. From Uzbekistan, the family first moved to the Bashkir village of Musalimkino. Here, new oddities began in Dina's behavior. She started dyeing her children blonde, so that they would look like her physically. Our acquaintances made a remark to her. Why did you start dyeing the child? She then excused herself, claiming she bought a lightening shampoo, and she accidentally lightened my hair, and she didn't dye me then, recalls Darina Azizova in an interview with journalist Elena Pogrebishkaya. After Bashkiria, the family moved to the small town of Ust-Kadav in the Chelyabinsk region. Azizova's first daughter, Dilyara, didn't live here long. At 23, she got married and moved away from her mother. And Darina, Diana, and David became hostages of their own mother. Didn't go to school, didn't bathe, starved. First, they lived in a tiny crumbling house. Then, taking out loans on her husband, Dina built a spacious 2-story house, installed video cameras, set a guard dog to patrol the territory, and surrounded it all with a 3-meter fence, so that no outsider's eyes could see what was happening behind it. When Darina finished the 2nd grade, her mother took her documents from school. The children were not registered in the city, and to any questions about them, the woman explained that they lived with their older sister and only occasionally came to visit their mother. What was happening behind the fence of the family's house was unknown to anyone, neither neighbors nor child protective services, nor the education department, nor the local police officer. For a while, you could still go to the store, somewhere you could just go out to the balcony. But specifically, She already didn't let us go out separately. Just go to the store and come back. And then, when we moved into the house in 2012, she completely limited freedom and forbade going out altogether, Darina tells. She explained that this is her little world, and she doesn't want to let us out into that evil world outside our home. According to her, everyone outside hurts each other. Love is a disappointment. Soon, Dina Azizova gained a reputation in the city as a seamstress and designer. She always looked striking and made costumes for city celebrations. At the same time, in the woman's perfect world, the children went around and chattered dirty clothes. At home, we had to wear the clothes she gave us. It was either some sort of tracksuit or t-shirts. In the summer, she indeed allowed wearing a dress because it was very hot. Darina Azizova shares. Likewise, we didn't bathe for a long time. It could be up to half a year. She would start to get angry, throw tantrums, saying, "You will only bathe when I allow it." Combing was also forbidden. Dina would make the children presentable only when she photographed or recorded them on video. In the videos published on the woman's YouTube channel, the children appear as dolls, performing tricks. At 13, she dyed me thoroughly white for the first time, says Darina. She dyed my younger sister at 6, but by then we weren't going out into society. Naturally, nobody saw this except for some subscribers because she ran pages for me and my sister. And again, the father was unaware of what was happening in the house. The wife explained to him as if the children were homeschooled, receiving assignments via email. When he left for work, he saw the children opening textbooks and preparing for their studies. He would go to work, and those textbooks would all be put away. We would go to our places, and nothing happened. But Dad thought everything was happening, because she plausibly asked him for money, claiming that they needed to contribute to something else, supposedly for school. Darina explains. Then she sent him to work in the Kurgan region on a shift basis. He went there, and she told him not to come back. She arranged with his boss so that he would just be transferred from one shift to another, and that's it. Suyun tried to come home, insisted on returning, but Dina threw tantrums each time, threatening to give the children to him and then kill herself, leaving him alone with 3 children. Then the man thought she didn't want to see him and just sent money. She constantly deceived me. She said they were starving, there wasn't enough money, that she had cancer, that she needed to undergo chemotherapy. She supposedly underwent 3 sessions. In reality, she had nothing, it turns out, admits Suyun. When Dina was left alone with the children, her hands were finally untied. But the children's freedom was completely over. They began to live on a schedule. We woke up, first cooked rice porridge with hearts for the dog, Gray, and fed him. Then we baked bread. Bread was baked every day. Throughout the week, we literally ate bread tea, bread tea. Well, 1 loaf was baked, and that's it. There was no other food besides bread during the week. Naturally, this bread wasn't enough. It got to the point where we collected crumbs from the tray. Darina describes the children's menu. There were products in the refrigerator, but they couldn't be touched. If we touched them, we would get it from her. There was meat, but also rarely. About once a month, chicken. Mom didn't like fish. She didn't care whether we liked it or not. What I brought, you must eat. If we said we didn't like something, she said we were being picky, started to get angry, and we got it again for that. Occasionally, tomatoes and pasta appeared in the children's diet. Once a week, they feasted on sandwiches with sausage, tomatoes, and spices. But no matter how hungry the children were, stealing the dog's food was forbidden. The mother always bought a certain amount of food for the shepherd, and if it ran out ahead of time, she could easily beat them. Depending on her mood, either with a hand or with a dog leash with a metal carabiner. The second to last time, she beat me with that leash with a carabiner, cracked my head open. Then, for some reason, she doused me with engine oil and made me sleep on the doorstep all night. The blood just dried overnight along with the oil. Then in the morning, she woke me up, and around evening, she allowed me to wash. Wounds healed exclusively on their own. No medications were kept in the house. They were treated with home remedies provided by the mother, usually baking soda and tea with lemon. So survival depended predominantly on the capabilities of the children's bodies. Due to the lack of treatment, David's spine became severely deformed, the bones fused incorrectly, and the boy began to develop 2 humps at 12 years old. I started to pay attention to it. I told Mom, and she says it's nothing serious. Then, a year and a half passed, and I see the hump growing more significantly. I started telling her that he probably needs surgery because it can't be corrected otherwise. She told me she didn't want to do surgery, that it was very convenient for her if he was disabled. I asked why it was convenient, and she said that he would be disabled and couldn't leave her, start his own separate life, and it was convenient for her to have him always around. Darina shared. Meanwhile, the children did have a chance to escape. For instance, once Darina stole money from the piggy bank and ran to the store for food while her mother was not at home. The overwhelming feeling of fear prevented the children from running away for good. Soon, the mother was entirely on the brink of madness. She began to see hallucinations, talk to the walls. Supposedly someone was following her. She could go outside and just pick on some young man crossing the street. She could stop him and ask, "Why are you following me?" Darina recounts. She also called the walls by different names, Max, Pasha, or something else. Then she started yelling at me. Supposedly I was communicating with them. After that, the children started to think the mother could actually kill them. She walked around the house with axes and knives, sharpened a decorative saber on a grinder. Then I realized something was blocking her mind. And then we had a conversation about me wanting to go outside to school to socialize with peers. And she said, "If you run away, I'll hang them and then hang myself." Darina shares her memories. "So you'll spend your life blaming yourself for leaving." Later, I tried to talk to her without angering her. She told me, "See that noose in the hallway? Tired of it? Go hang yourself." She nailed the noose in the hallway. Creating an illusion of a perfect life, Azizova created social media accounts for her daughters, where they posted happy family photos. Later, in the same social networks, Dina found Ruslan, whom she had been in love with since her youth, and liked his posts on behalf of her daughters, again, trying to win back her beloved. However, Dina's relationship with Ruslan never materialized. Soon they stopped communicating again, this time forever. Meanwhile, her children started meeting and chatting with new people on social networks. Thus they found a young man who sympathized with their story and helped organize their escape in 2020. When Dina went to the post office, he called them a taxi, and the children managed to run away. "My children have been stolen. Help, my children have been stolen." Neighbors heard Dina Azizova's familiar voice when she knocked on the door of her neighbor's house on November 6, 2019. The woman called the police, and officers interrogated both the mother and those who lived nearby until late at night. Learning that the police were working on their street, another neighbor, a friend of Azizova's, rushed home. Seeing her, Dina ran out to meet her and told her that her children had been stolen. At first I was surprised. Who needs your children? Then suddenly I realized What children? She told me they were with their older sister. When the neighbor asked again what she was talking about, Azizova's face changed, and she went back into the house. Meanwhile, the police were also called to the other end of the city, from the apartment where the children were hiding. The officers who arrived on the scene were dumbfounded as they listened to the children's story, after which they took them to the hospital, because they had never been observed anywhere before. The next day, the father called, asking how it happened that there was no mother and the house had burned down. Then I approached the guardianship authority, asked what happened. They told me she had set the big house on fire, and in the small one, she took her own life. She left a note, we found it later. She had hidden it, stuffed it into some corner. But strangely, it mentioned only Diana and David, not a word about me. It said, Dianochka and Davidushka, I loved you very much, forgive me. And that's it, Darina says. She warned me that if I ran away, she would hate me. Probably that's what happened. She didn't understand me. I think something was wrong with her head. Probably she didn't control herself much in this regard. How the children's lives unfolded. The main thing the children had to learn was how to interact with the outside world. The first thing I saw was public transport, which I was afraid to get on. I didn't understand the rules for riding it. Then the ATM. I learned how to deposit and withdraw money. Then escalators. Then the sea. I visited the sea last year, the older sister shares. While the children were getting acquainted with the surrounding world, and the prosecutor's office was searching for the guilty parties, regional officials were trying to figure out where and with whom it would be better for the trio to live now. The brother and sister were trying to be convinced to go to an orphanage. Regional psychologists came to me in the rehabilitation center. They sat in front of me and said that I was young, that I should have a boyfriend, says Darina. Officials also planned to rent an apartment for the children and restore the house, and they wanted to appoint Darina as the guardian. But solving the housing issue remained only on paper. Moreover, the children's father soon returned to the Chelyabinsk region and rented a 2-room apartment where the family reunited without the mother. The decision was made to leave the children with the father since he was not deprived of parental rights. Diana and David went to school after being freed. Diana is now 15 years old and studying in the 6th grade. At first, it was unusual for them. Diana came from school and cried because the children didn't think about what they were saying. They either asked directly or started pointing fingers. It was necessary to work with psychologists. I had to talk to her myself. I had to talk to her classmates so that they wouldn't hurt her, Darina explains. David is now 20 years old. He studies in the 7th grade and is preparing for an expensive family operation, which requires about 270,000 rubles. It's possible to get a quota, but it takes too long to wait. The father has no means to pay for the operation. Darina did not resume her education. She focused on finding her place in life. She lived with relatives for the first 7 months. Then she met a boyfriend. Initially, he wrote to her on social networks, then visited her, met her brother, sister, father, and later took her to Moscow. At first, everything was fine in the relationship, but Darina seemed to meet a new strange guardian. Her suitor, just like her mother, followed the girl everywhere with a camera. He filmed how she was adjusting to free life. Then came the reproaches for being fat, unattractive. Then the insults towards my brother started, calling him an idiot and other names. I took that even more painfully than criticism directed at me. Because of this, we also argued, shares Darina, about her experience in her first relationship. Then there were incidents. When we met new people, he, for some reason, almost always mentioned that I had been on Malakov's show, that I had such a story. I didn't understand because I keep quiet about it myself. He seemed to try to raise his self-esteem at my expense. Look who I am with. After a year and a half, Darina was no longer satisfied with such a situation, and she left for Ust-Katav, where her sister and brother had been allocated a one-room apartment by the state. There, she once again engaged in an epistolary romance and went back to Moscow, this time to another boyfriend. But this relationship didn't last long either. After breaking up with the guy, Darina found out she was pregnant. She is now 6 months pregnant and works as a cashier at Pyaterochka.